Hi, I'm Peter J. Ray. Welcome to Adventures in History. Today's topic is the 1969 Cleveland Indians MLB baseball season. Again, the Tribe was playing in the American League, the junior circuit of Major League Baseball, and home games were played at Cleveland Municipal Stadium downtown, where First Energy Stadium now stands on Lake Erie. In 1969, the two leagues were divided into divisions for the first time, and Cleveland was playing in the American League East division. The Tribe had a tough year in 1969. They finished in last place, sixth and last place in the American League East, with a record of 62-99, winning percentage of .385. Gosh, 46.5 games out of first. The first place team was the Baltimore Orioles, who were 109-53, winning percentage of .673. Wow. Second place, the Detroit Tigers, 90-72, 19 games out of first. So the Orioles really ran away with the American League East title. Third place, the Boston Red Sox, 87-75. Fourth place, the Washington Senators, 86-76. Fifth place, the New York Yankees, 80-81. And in sixth and last place, the Cleveland Indians, 62-99. Now in the American League West, the Minnesota Twins finished in first with a record of 97-65, winning percentage of .599. Second place, the Oakland Athletics, 88-74, 9 games out of first. Third place, the California Angels, 71-91. Fourth place, the Kansas City Royals, 69-93. Fifth place, the Chicago White Sox, 68-94. And in sixth and last place, the Seattle Pilots, 64-98, winning percentage of .395, 33 games out of first. Now, Tribe home attendance in 1969 was 619,970 for an average of 7,701 per game. That was down 240,000 from 1968. 1969 was not only a year of divisions, the leagues being divided into divisions, but also expansion. 4 teams were added. In the American League, the Kansas City Royals and Seattle Pilots. And in the National League, the San Diego Padres and the Montreal Expos. Now, because of the divisions, there had to be a first round before the World Series, the American League Championship Series, or ALCS, and the National League Championship Series. And those were series of best out of 5. You had to win 3 to go to the World Series. Tribe had a major trade on April 19th. The Indians traded Sonny Siebert, Vicente Romo, and Joe Askew to the Boston Red Sox for Ken Harrelson, Dick Ellsworth, and Juan Pizarro. The Tribe was 11 games out of first on May 1st, only a month after the season started. Never got any closer. Very tough year. In 1969, 80-year-old Stan Coveleski, who was a hero of the 1920 Tribe when they won the World Series, was inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame. And at the ceremony in Cooperstown, New York, it was time for Coveleski to give his speech, but he was unable to get a word out. The new MLB commissioner, Bowie Kuhn, walked over and put his arm around Coveleski and said, quote, "This is your day. Take as much time as you need." And then Coveleski then made, to quote Stan Musial, another inductee, quote, "a most beautiful speech." In 1969, the Chicago Cubs had a 9.5-game lead in the National League East on August 13th. And a month later, September 13th, that lead was gone, and they were 3.5 games behind the Mets. The Cubs manager was Leo DeRocher, who was some troubled person. He had a lot of conflict with players and umpires. And the sports writers, Jim Enright wrote, quote, "The epitaph on the tomb of the 1969 Cubs reads, quote, died from lack of leadership." Paul Dixon wrote, quote, Ironically, the man who failed to lead had once been the most daring of all baseball leaders, but in 1969, Leo the Lion DeRocher had little left but his roar. Now in 69, the pitcher's mound was lowered from 15 inches to 10 inches to try to help hitters and have more offense. And also, the strike zone was shrunk because there was, back in 68, there just wasn't enough hitting. Games were not very entertaining. September 22nd, the Giants were playing the Padres in San Diego, and Willie Mays hit his 600th career home run. His teammates on the Giants came out from the dugout to home plate to greet him when he came after circling the bases. And Mays was very touched. He said, quote, "It was my most satisfying home run because of all those guys waiting for me when I crossed home. There was nobody left on the bench. That really got to me." The Sporting News named Willie Mays Player of the Decade. 1969, Ted Williams was the new manager of the Washington Senators. And on opening day in Washington, Williams tipped his cap to the crowd for the first time since 1940. On July 21st, MLB celebrated its 100th anniversary with a lavish dinner in Washington, D.C. 2,200 people played. There were 35 members of the Hall of Fame. And the baseball writers voted Babe Ruth the greatest player ever, and Joe DiMaggio the most outstanding living player. So they were celebrating going back to the 1869 Cincinnati Reds, the first professional baseball team. The Senators in 69 had their best season in 17 years, and they finished with a record of 86 and 76 in fourth place. And Ted Williams, the former Red Sox slugger, was named American League Manager of the Year. Williams said, quote, "I'm terribly honored, but I'm terribly disappointed that Billy Martin and Earl Weaver didn't get it. Both of them did a hell of a job, and both of them deserve the honor." On June 8th, 1969, they had Mickey Mantle Day at Yankee Stadium, and the Yankees retired Mantle's number 7. And Mickey spoke to the crowd and said, quote, "I just want to say that playing 18 years in Yankee Stadium for you folks is the best thing that could ever happen to a ball player. I never knew how a man who was going to die," he's talking about Lou Gehrig, "could say he was the luckiest man in the world, but now I can understand." When he retired, Mantle had the record for career strikeouts, 1,710, which was broken by Reggie Jackson. And Reggie Jackson in 1969 made the first of 9 Sports Illustrated covers. At the All-Star break, Jackson had 37 home runs, and he was ahead of the single-season home run record, paces set by Roger Maris and Babe Ruth. However, he only had 10 more, finished with 47. But it was the most ever by a player 23 years old or younger. And Jackson said, quote, "If I played in New York, they'd name a candy bar after me." On July 20th, 1969, the Apollo 11 lunar module, the Eagle, landed on the moon. And Neil Armstrong, one of the astronauts, radioed, quote, "Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed." There were 600 million television viewers worldwide. The 3 astronauts on the mission included Armstrong, Michael Collins, and Buzz Aldrin. And of course, Neil Armstrong walked on the moon. That was really a big deal. The Mets' Tug McGraw said, quote, "If we can land a man on the moon, we can win the World Series." The 1969 All-Star Game was played at Robert F. Kennedy Stadium in Washington, D.C. It was scheduled for July 22nd, but postponed because of rain for the following day. In the meantime, U.S. President Richard Nixon invited the players to come to the White House on the 22nd. The Tribe Public Address announcer from 1969 to 1972 was Ron Penfound, also known as Captain Penny, who was famous on WEWS-TV Channel 5 as a host of a children's TV show which showed cartoons from 1955 to 1971. The 69 Tribe had the worst start in team history. They started 1-15. Gosh. I read a fine book. The title is A Magic Summer, The Amazing Story of the 1969 New York Mets by Stanley Cohen, 2009. Cohen said, quote, "A team's followers always outlast its players and even its owners. They represent a team's truest continuity. They are the repository of its history." I read another fine book. The title is After the Miracle, The Lasting Brotherhood of the 69 Mets by Art Shamsky and Eric Sherman, 2019. From August 15th to August 18th, 1969, the Woodstock Music Festival was held at a farm near Bethel, New York. And the musicians who performed included Joan Baez, Santana, the Grateful Dead, Janis Joplin, The Who, Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, and Jimi Hendrix. Now with the Tribe, Vernon Stouffer was back as the Tribe owner. Stouffer was the Tribe owner from 1966 to 1971. Stouffer made manager Alvin Dark the general manager as well. And this was controversial. Stouffer said, quote, "Until now, Alvin Dark hasn't had a free hand in bringing up from the minors more Alvin Darks, the kind of player he was. The Dark system of play should begin in the minors, and it will be his job to set it up. This is the way we do it in Stouffer restaurants. We fashion Stouffer people all the way, and we have proven the system to be successful." Vernon Stouffer. Now, Gabe Paul was still had the title of general manager, but he had lost most of his power. Paul was the head of the Tribe ownership group from 1963 to 1966. He was a Tribe GM from 1961 to 1973, and from 1978 to 1984. In 1969, Paul handled the financial, marketing, and promotional duties. On July 1st, he was no longer in charge of personnel moves. He could not make a trade or bring up guys from the minors, and that authority was transferred to Alvin Dark, the manager. When Gabe Paul was GM of the Yankees later, and Billy Martin was the manager, Paul's daughter, Jenny, developed a relationship with Billy Martin. She said, quote, "I was Dad's Yankee princess, but Billy was no prince, and that was not a fairy tale romance." Gabe Paul. Herb Score was back as a Tribe broadcaster on WERE radio. Score was a Tribe player from 1955 to 1959. He was a Tribe TV and radio broadcaster from 1964 to 1997, and he's buried at Lakewood Park Cemetery in Rocky River, Ohio. Herb Score. His partner was Bob Neal on WERE radio. Neal was a Tribe TV and radio broadcaster from 1952 to 1953, and from 1957 to 1972. Bob Neal. Harry Jones was back as a Tribe TV broadcaster on WJW-TV. Jones was a Cleveland plain dealer reporter from 1940 to 1947, a Cleveland plain dealer sports writer from 1947 to 60, and a Tribe TV and radio broadcaster from 1961 to 1977. Harry Jones. His partner was Dave Martin on WJW-TV. Martin was a Tribe TV broadcaster from 1969 to 1971. He was a Chicago White Sox broadcaster in 68, broadcaster for the Red Sox in 72. He also broadcast for the New England Whalers in the World Hockey Association, as well also the Pittsburgh Pirates in 1980. He was an NFL announcer in 1970 and a college football announcer in 1967. Dave Martin. Alvin Dark was back as manager, and he was also the general manager. Alvin Dark was the Tribe manager from 1968 to 1971, and the Tribe GM from 1969 to 1971. And there was this power struggle, Alvin Dark against Gabe Paul, and again, this is the year. During the year, Dark was given the responsibility for personnel moves, trades, and bringing up guys from the minors or sending them down, although he did not have the title. Regarding 1969, Dark said, quote, "It was a horrible season." And now Dark had won the 68 Good Guy Award, And then he said, quote, "By 1971, I wouldn't have gotten a vote for Good Guy of the Minute. The trouble started in the middle of the 1969 season when I told Vernon Stouffer, the owner, that I wanted the general manager's job. He took it out of the hands of Gabe Paul and gave me my wish. Gabe Paul was resentful and bitter with good reason. Instead of trying to work out a good relationship with him, I turned my back. He had hired me, and I wound up with his job. I could have learned a lot from Gabe Paul. Unlike me, Gabe was brilliant handling the press. The Cleveland columnists, especially Hal Lebovitz, were his buddies. They'd been good to me, too, that first year, but when the change was made, I became the other side. And when they turned on me, I turned on them." Alvin Dark. Luke Easter was a new coach in 1969. Luke Easter was a Tribe player from 1949 to 1954 and a Tribe coach in 1969. Luke Easter. Johnny Lippon was back as a Tribe coach. Lippon was a Tribe coach from 1968 to 1971, and he was a Tribe interim manager at the end of the 1971 season. Johnny Lippon. Jack Sanford was back. Jack Sanford was a Tribe coach from 1968 to 1969. Jack Sanford. George Strickland was back. Strickland was a Tribe player from 1952 to 1957, and from 1959 to 1960. He was a Tribe coach from 1963 to 1969. He was a Tribe interim manager for parts of the 64 and 66 seasons. This was the end of his time in Cleveland. He continued as an MLB coach until 1972 with the Kansas City Royals. George Strickland. Now, the regular lineup, Duke Sims was the catcher. Sims batted .236 with 77 hits. He scored 40 runs, 8 doubles, 18 home runs, 45 RBIs, a stolen base, 66 walks in 114 games. And Sims was with Cleveland from 1964 to 1970. Duke Sims. Tony Horton was at first base. Horton batted .278 with 174 hits. He scored 77 runs, 25 doubles, 4 triples, 27 home runs, 93 RBIs, 3 stolen bases, 37 walks, 91 strikeouts in 159 games. An outstanding year for Tony Horton. Horton was with Cleveland from 1967 to 1970. Tony Horton. Vern Fuller was at second base. Fuller batted .236 with 60 hits. He scored 25 runs, 11 doubles, a triple, 4 home runs, 22 RBIs, 2 stolen bases, 20 walks in 108 games. And Fuller was with Cleveland in 1964, and from 1966 to 1970, Vern Fuller. Larry Brown was at shortstop. Brown batted .239 with 112 hits. He scored 48 runs, 10 doubles, 2 triples, 4 home runs, 24 RBIs, 5 stolen bases, 44 walks in 132 games, and Brown was with Cleveland from 1963 to 1971. Larry Brown. Max Alvis was at third base. Alvis batted .225 with 43 hits. He scored 13 runs, 6 doubles, a home run, 15 RBIs, a stolen base, 14 walks in 66 games, and Alvis was with Cleveland from 1962 to 1969. This was the end of his time in Cleveland. His MLB career continued until 1970. Max Alvis. Frank Baker was in left field. Baker batted .256 with 44 hits. He scored 21 runs, 5 doubles, 3 triples, 3 home runs, 15 RBIs, 2 stolen bases, 14 walks in 52 games. Baker was born in 1944 in Bartow, Florida, and he died in 2010 in Raleigh, North Carolina at age 66. For his career, he batted .232 with 4 home runs and 38 RBIs. Baker played for the Cleveland Indians in 1969 and 1971. He went to Franklin High School in Somerset, New Jersey, and is in their Football Hall of Fame. He was in the U.S. Army in the Second World War, 1967 and 1968. He died of complications from heart failure. In the minors, Baker played for the Dubuque Packers, Portland Beavers, Salt Lake City Angels, Wichita Arrows, Pawtucket Indians, and Russell Schneider wrote, quote, Not since Rudy Regalado burned up the Cactus League in 1954 have Cleveland fans been so excited by a rookie as they are about Frank Baker. Doug Kirkle wrote, quote, Frank Baker was a Florida native who had 12 sisters and brothers. A baker's dozen, so to speak. Frank Baker. Jose Cardinal was in center field. Cardinal batted .257 with 143 hits. He scored 75 runs, 26 doubles, 3 triples, 11 home runs, 45 RBIs, 36 stolen bases, 49 walks in 146 games. Cardinal was with Cleveland in 1968 and 1969. This was the end of his time in Cleveland. His MLB career continued until 1980 as a player and until 2003 as a coach. And he won the 1969 Gordon Cobbledick Golden Tomahawk Award. Jose Cardinal. Ken Hawk Harrelson was in right field. Harrelson batted .222 with 115 hits. He scored 83 runs, 13 doubles, 4 triples, 27 home runs, 84 RBIs, 17 stolen bases, 95 walks, 96 strikeouts, and 149 games. Harrelson was born in 1941 in Woodruff, South Carolina, and he's 77 years old in 2019. For his career, he batted .239 with 131 home runs and 421 RBIs. Harrelson played for the Kansas City Athletics, Washington Senators, Boston Red Sox, and Cleveland Indians from 1963 to 1971. He was an All-Star in '68 with the Red Sox, American League RBI leader in '68. He had a 33-year tenure as the broadcaster for the Chicago White Sox. In '67, he called his owner, the Kansas City owner, Charlie Finley, quote, a menace to baseball, and was released. But he signed a big contract with the Red Sox after that. He won an American League title with the '67 Red Sox. In '68, he was third in the American League MVP voting. Harrelson was traded to the Tribe on April 16, 1969. Was very shocked by that because he'd become very popular in Boston, and he had a brief retirement before agreeing to come to Cleveland. He had a half-hour TV show called The Hawk's Nest. He was very popular in Boston and in Cleveland. He had a broken leg in 1970. He popularized batting gloves in the 1960s. He also was a pro golfer. He was a Red Sox TV broadcaster from '75 to '81 and a White Sox announcer from 1982 to '85. He was White Sox GM in '86, a Yankee broadcaster from '87 to '88, and then back with the White Sox as a broadcaster from 1990 to 2018. He apparently gave the nickname Frank to Frank Thomas of the Big Hurt as the broadcaster, and he was considered the most home-biased broadcaster for the Red Sox, really rooting for the Red Sox. Well, their broadcaster. In the minors, Harrelson played for the Binghamton Triplets, Sanford Greyhounds, and Portland Beavers. In Venezuela, for Leones de Caracas, Industriales de Valencia. After his trade to the Tribe, Harrelson refused to report. He threatened to retire. However, he was given a hefty pay raise after a week, and then he came to Cleveland. Doug Kirkle wrote, quote, Ken Harrelson had a style, a panache, that appealed to the younger fans in the rebellious late 1960s. The Hawk was baseball's #1 fashion pate, sporting long locks of hair, designer sunglasses, and flashy threads. Harrelson said, quote, Alvin Dark and Duke Sims were great friends of mine. I played for Alvin in Kansas City, and he always treated me great and gave me good advice. I moved into the Winton place when I got to Cleveland, and my apartment, which was on the top floor, overlooked Lake Erie. It was beautiful. Art Modell had a place in the building, and so did Vernon Stouffer. Harrelson had gotten a letter from some older folks saying that he should cut his hair, and he wrote back, quote, Look, if your kid had a nose as big as mine and ears as big as mine, you'd let him wear long hair too. Carol Conklin wrote, quote, Free spirit would be an understatement when describing Ken Harrelson. An all-star talent combined with steel-like independence, Harrelson put up outstanding power-hitting numbers at his best and walked away from his playing career while still near his peak because he felt like it. I read a fine book. The title is Hawk by Ken Harrelson with Al Hirschberg, 1969. Harrelson liked to wear his baseball uniform pants tight, and he had a conflict with the Red Sox clubhouse man Don Fitzpatrick, who said, quote, "You squawking about your pants again? Why the hell don't you just put 'em on and stop your belly aching?" Harrelson said, quote, "No one in the world would call me a modest man, and I'll prove it right now by telling you I'm one heck of a first baseman. The difference between real greatness and just average success is the power of concentration. Every rookie, no matter how good he thinks he is, dies a million deaths during his first spring training with a major league club. He's scared to death of being cut." Regarding Alvin Dark, Harrelson wrote, quote, "I never had a manager more respected by his players or in better control of them. We all would have gladly gone to hell and back for him. I am a ham at heart, and hams love nothing more than the spotlight. In Boston in 1967, the whole baseball world was just one gigantic spotlight. Boston made me." Now he had this, as I said, this conflict with Charlie Finley with the Kansas City A's and was released and signed with Boston in August of 67. And he said, quote, "I was no longer Ken Harrelson, the journeyman first baseman who could play golf. I was now the Hawk. I was on cloud 9 when we won that pennant. My whole big league career had been spent with losers, and now, out of a clear sky, I was suddenly with a winner. There is no thrill like playing in a World Series. Louie Tiant's a Cuban who can't pronounce hawk. He calls me honk." After arriving in Cleveland, he said, quote, the trip into the city produced new thrills. For every time we stopped or slowed down, people recognized me and yelled a welcome." Now, on his tribe uniform, he had Hawk instead of Harrelson, the only player to have a nickname on the back of their uniform. Harrelson said, quote, "Now suddenly I was a local celebrity, a Cleveland boy known all over the country. The longer I stayed in town, the more I loved it. Gabe Paul made me feel right at home. Alvin Dark, my best friend, was my manager again. The Cleveland fans continued to be marvelous." I'm reading another fine book. The title is Hawk, I Did It My Way by Ken Harrelson with Jeff Snook, 2018. Harrelson said, quote, "I once loved living in the fast lane. I traveled by helicopters and limousines. I had long hair and could have passed for a member of the Mod Squad in the 1960s. I always believed in standing proudly and singing loudly during the national anthem, holding doors and pulling out chairs for women, running hard to first base, and signing as many autographs for the fans as possible. My mama's favorite player, Rocky Colavito, taught me that. His teammate in the minors was Dick Hauser, one of them, who gave Harrelson the nickname Hawk. Now, as Alvin Dark was the manager of Harrelson with the Kansas City A's and then with Cleveland, Harrelson said, quote, "It didn't take me long to grow to love Alvin Dark, and I think he loved me back. I wanted to bust my back to win games for him. He was like the father I never had." September 1968, Mantle's last MLB at bat, Harrelson was playing right field, and he said, quote, "I had tears running down my cheeks." Again, he was traded to the tribe in 69. Harrelson said, quote, "Herb Score was just a wonderful person to be around and one of my all-time favorites, a legendary Indians radio broadcaster. Sam McDowell was one of those guys who would literally give you the shirt off his back. There was not a bad bone in his body." Ken Harrelson. Now, the bench players included Russ Snyder, who played outfield and was a utility player. Snyder batted .248 with 66 hits. He scored 26 runs, 10 doubles, 2 home runs, 24 RBIs, 3 stolen bases, 25 walks in 122 games. And Snyder was with Cleveland in 1968 and 1969. This was the end of his time in Cleveland. His MLB career continued until 1970. Russ Snyder. Lou Klimchak played some infield. Klimchak batted .287 with 74 hits. He scored 26 runs, 13 doubles, 2 triples, 6 home runs, 26 RBIs, 18 walks in 90 games, and Klimchak was with Cleveland from 1968 to 1970. And in 1969, he won the Frank Gibbons Good Guy Award. Lou Klimchak. Zoilo Versales played some infield. Versales batted .226 with 49 hits. He scored 21 runs, 11 doubles, a triple, a home run, 13 RBIs, 3 stolen bases, 21 walks in 72 games. And Versales was born in 1939 in Vedado, Cuba, and he died in 1995 in Bloomington, Minnesota at age 55. For his career, he batted .242 with 95 home runs and 471 RBIs. Versales played for the Washington Senators, Minnesota Twins, Los Angeles Dodgers, Cleveland Indians, Atlanta Braves, and Hiroshima Toyo Carp in Japan from 1959 to 1972. He was a two-time American League All-Star in 63 and 65 with the Twins, an American League MVP in 65. Versales won 2 Gold Gloves in 63 and 65. He's in the Minnesota Twins Hall of Fame. They called him Zorro. He won an American League title in 65 with the Twins. Versales had difficulty adjusting to life in the U.S. because of the language barrier and a fear of failure. He was eternally homesick for his native Cuba. In 65, he was on the cover of Sports Illustrated. He was the first Latin MLB MVP. When he retired, after he retired from baseball, he had a hard time making a living and never learned English. He worked in menial jobs and ended up selling his MVP trophy and his all-star rings and his gold gloves. He also had back problems, 2 heart attacks, stomach surgery, died of heart disease. In the minors, he played for the Elmira Pioneers, Fox City Foxes. In Mexico, for the Algodoneros de Unión Laguna, Cafeteros de Córdoba, Naranjeros de Hermosillo, Petroleros de Poza Rica, and Piratas de Sabinas, and in Venezuela for Cardenales de Lara, Tigres de Aragua, and in Cuba for Cienfuegos and Marianao. Zoilo Versales. Eddie Leon played some shortstop. Leon batted .239 with 51 hits. He scored 20 runs, 6 doubles, 3 home runs, 19 RBIs, 2 stolen bases, 19 walks in 64 games, and Leon was with Cleveland from 1968 to 1972. Eddie Leon. Richie Shine Blum played some left field. Shine Blum batted .186 with 37 hits. He scored 13 runs, 5 doubles, a triple, a home run, 13 RBIs, 19 walks in 102 games. Shine Blum was with Cleveland in 1965, from 1967 to 1969. His MLB career continued. This was the end of his time in Cleveland. His MLB career continued until 1974, and in Japan until 1976. Shine Blum said, quote, "I was one of the worst hitters in April that ever played the game. It seemed that if I could get through the month of April, I was okay. April's kind of destroyed me. Maybe it was because I always dreamed of playing in the big leagues. I was overawed that I was suddenly playing with a guy like Rocky Colavito. Colavito grew up in the same New York neighborhood that I did, and playing with him was like seeing my baseball card come to life." Shine Blum started the 69 season going 0 for 35 at the plate. He said, quote, "It was horrible. I wasn't striking out, and I was hitting the ball hard, but nothing would fall in. After his first hit, his average was .028, the lowest ever posted at the Cleveland Stadium scoreboard other than .000. In spring training, Shine Blum hit for the negative cycle. He was thrown out in a game. He was thrown out at first on a play, thrown out at second trying for a double, thrown out at third trying for a triple, and thrown out at home trying for an inside-the-park home run, all in the same game. For the 72 Royals in early September, Shine Blum and Rod Carew were tied for the American League batting lead at 340. However, Shine Blum fouled a ball off his ankle, kept playing with a sore ankle, and was thrown out at first base on 8 hits to left field. When he was thrown out at first, he was so slow going to first, so and they kept playing, and he finished at 300. He's the godfather of Bert Blyleven's son, Tim. Now, during his 0 for 35 streak, when he was 0 for 28, Shine Blum hit a ball. He said, quote, "The official scorer could have, should have, everybody in the dugout said, given me a hit instead of charging the fielder with an error. I still remember it well. I also remember the official scorer very well. But I forgive you." He was talking to Russell Schneider, the official scorer. Shine Blum said, quote, "I am the only player in baseball history to hit for a reverse cycle." When he was thrown out at home, he slowed down rounding third. His gas tank was empty halfway to the plate. And Shine Blum said, quote, "The catcher had to come up the line to tag me. I couldn't make it." Regarding manager Alvin Dark in 1969, Shine Blum said, quote, "That entire season he said only one sentence to me. Nobody ever went an entire season without a hit." Dan Coughlin wrote, quote, "That may have been Alvin Dark's version of a pep talk, or his way of showing support and encouragement." Shine Blum in 69 led the American League in pinch hitting appearances with 54. After the season, he was sold to Washington for $25,000 and a player to be named later. Shine Blum said, quote, "Later, Washington wanted to make me the player to be named later." When his career ended when he severed his Achilles tendon playing basketball. Shine Blum said, quote, "I felt like I was shot. Everybody in the gym drove for cover." Richie Shine Blum. Cap Peterson played some left field. Peterson batted .227 with 25 hits. He scored 8 runs, 3 doubles, a home run, 14 RBIs, 24 walks in 76 games. Peterson was born in 1942 in Tacoma, Washington, and he died in 1980 in Tacoma at age 37. For his career, he batted .230 with 19 home runs and 122 RBIs. Peterson played for the San Francisco Giants, Washington Senators, and Cleveland Indians from 1962 to 1969. His given name was Charles Andrew Peterson, and so his nickname came from the initials CAP or CAP. He died of kidney disease. In 1962, he was the Texas League Player of the Year. In the minors, he played for the El Paso Sun Kings, Eugene Emeralds, and Wichita Arrows. Cap Peterson. Dave Nelson played some second base. Nelson batted .203 with 25 hits. He scored 11 runs, 6 RBIs, 4 stolen bases, 9 walks in 52 games. Nelson was with Cleveland from 1968 to 1969. This was the end of his time in Cleveland. His MLB playing career lasted until 1977. Dave Nelson. Chuck Hinton was a utility player. Hinton batted .256 with 31 hits. He scored 18 runs, 3 doubles, 2 triples, 3 home runs, 19 RBIs, 2 stolen bases, 8 walks in 94 games. And Hinton was with Cleveland from 1965 to 1967. From 1969 to 1971. Chuck Hinton. Ray Fosse was a spare catcher. Fosse batted .172 with 20 hits. He scored 11 runs, 3 doubles, 2 home runs, 9 RBIs, a stolen base, 8 walks in 32 games. Fosse was with Cleveland from 1967 to 1972, from 1976 to 1977. Pitcher Mike Paul, he was a teammate with pitcher Mike Paul in AAA, pitcher Mike Paul at AAA was discouraged. And he told his catcher in the minors, Ray Fosse, that he was not throwing well. Fosse said, quote, "Now listen to me. You can pitch in this league. I know, I'm your catcher." And Mike Paul said, quote, "It was the perfect thing to say to me." The pitchers loved Ray Fosse. We called him Mule because he was strong and could carry us. Ray Fosse. Lee May played some left field. May batted .250 with 27 hits. He scored 9 runs, 5 doubles, a home run, 15 RBIs, a stolen base, 8 walks in 43 games. And May was with Cleveland from 1967 to 1969. This was the end of his time in Cleveland. His MLB career continued until 1971. Lee May. Ken Suarez was a spare catcher. Suarez batted .294 with 25 hits. He scored 7 runs, 5 doubles, a home run, 9 RBIs, a stolen base, 15 walks in 36 games, and Suarez was with Cleveland from 1968 to 1969, and in 1971, Ken Suarez. Joe Askew was a catcher. Askew batted .292 with 7 hits. He scored a run, had a home run, an RBI, 4 walks in 7 games. Askew was with Cleveland from 1963 to 1969. This was the end of his time in Cleveland. His MLB career continued until 1972. Joe the Immortal Cuban Askew. Russ Nagelson was a utility player. Nagelson batted .353 with 6 hits. He scored a run, had 3 walks in 12 games, and Nagelson was with Cleveland from 1968 to 1970. Russ Nagelson. Lou Camilli played some third base. Camilli batted 14 times. He did not have a hit, struck out 3 times in 13 games. Camilli was born in 1946 in El Paso, Texas, and he's 72 years old in 2019. For his career, he batted .146 with 3 RBIs. He played for the Cleveland Indians from 1969 to 1972. Camilli played college baseball for Texas A&M University. And he was in the 1969 Team USA team playing in the World Amateur Tournament. He got his first MLB hit, a single off of Vida Blue, on August 30th, 1971. His first 34 MLB at-bats, he did not have a hit, the longest streak to start a career for a non-pitcher. In MLB, he played 107 games with 22 hits. Playing for the Tribe, the team never finished higher than 5th when Camilli was on the team. And Camilli said, quote, they ought to change our name to the Cleveland Light Company. We don't have anything but utility men. The minors, Camilli played for the Oklahoma City 89ers, the Reno Silver Sox, and the Wichita Arrows. Lou Camilli. Jimmy Hall played some outfield. Hall batted 10 times. He did not have a hit. He scored a run, had a stolen base, 2 walks, and struck out 3 times in 4 games. And Hall was with Cleveland from 1968 to 1969. This was the end of his time in Cleveland. His MLB career continued until 1970. Jimmy Hall. Jack Heidemann played some shortstop. Heidemann batted 3 times. He struck out twice in 3 games. Heidemann was born in 1949 in Brenham, Texas, and he's 70 years old in 2019. For his career, he batted .211 with 9 home runs and 75 RBIs. Heidemann played for the Cleveland Indians, St. Louis Cardinals, New York Mets, and Milwaukee Brewers from 1969 to 1977. In 1971, he had a concussion and a knee injury. Tom McCraw hit a fly ball, and Heidemann had a collision with Veda Pinson and John Lowenstein. As a result, McCraw had an inside-the-park home run. It should have been an out. Heidemann was 5 years of teammates with Dick Tidrow, John Lowenstein, and Phil Hennigan. The minors, he played for the Portland Beavers, Wichita Arrows, Tulsa Oilers, Tucson Toros, and Tidewater Tides. In Venezuela, he played for Leones de Caracas. Heidemann's father was a farmer. He grew up on a farm. And after he signed for the Tribe, Heidemann remarked, quote, "It was an opportunity for me to get off the farm, a chance my dad never had." His biggest thrill, he said, quote, "It was the first time we went into Yankee Stadium. I stood at home plate and thought, here I am, little Jackie Heidemann from Brenham High School, standing where Babe Ruth and Mickey Mantle and Roger Maris and Casey Stengel and all the guys I had worshipped had played." His signing bonus was $27,000. Heidemann said, quote, "We were going to ask for another $2,500, but then my dad said to me, 'Son, you want to play baseball?' Of course I did." And then he said, "Plus, They are going to pay you to play baseball, is that right? And I said yes again. So we signed, that was it. My dad was a farmer, my mom was a teacher, and we didn't have a lot of money. Jack Heidemann. The pitching staff, Sam McDowell was the ace pitcher. McDowell was 18-14 with an ERA of 2.94, 39 games, 38 starts, 18 complete games, 4 shutouts, a save, 285 innings pitched, and 279 strikeouts, which led the American League. McDowell batted .174 with 16 hits. He scored 3 runs, had 3 doubles, 6 RBIs, and struck out 31 times. McDowell was with Cleveland from 1961 to 1971. In '69, McDowell was the only Tribe starting pitcher with a winning record. He played on the 1969 American League All-Star team and was the '69 Tribe Man of the Year. Carroll Conklin wrote, quote, "His fastball was on top of the plate before you could barely get the bat off your shoulder. The break on his curve was nothing less than wicked, and his imposing stature on the mound made his heat and occasional wildness all the more intimidating." McDowell's 1,663 strikeouts are most in the American League by pitchers in the 1960s. Sam McDowell. Louie Tiant was 9-20 with an ERA of 3.71, 38 games, 37 starts, 9 complete games, a shutout, 249 2/3 innings pitched, and 156 strikeouts. Tiant batted .235 with 19 hits. He scored 8 runs, had 2 doubles, a triple, 2 home runs, 9 RBIs, 3 walks, and struck out 22 times. Tiant was with Cleveland from 1964 to 1969. This was the end of his time in Cleveland. His MLB career continued until 1982. In '69, Tiant was in conflict with manager Alvin Dark, and that led to his December 12th trade, along with Stan Williams, to the Minnesota Twins for Dean Chance, Ted Eulander, Bob Miller, and Greg Nettles. Now, when Tiant was with the Twins, Tom Mee wrote, quote, "Louie Tiant became our clubhouse comedian right away. Louie was great for team spirit. If he saw a kid getting out of line or maybe just straying a bit, he'd quietly talk with him." Mee was the Twins' publicist, and he said, quote, "He was always ready and willing to help me when I needed someone for an appearance. If he promised you he'd attend a function, he was there when the time came. I thought he was a heck of a guy." In '71 with the Twins, Tiant was injured and ineffective, and many believe that he was washed up. Tiant said, quote, "I never gave up. I kept telling myself as long as I could get the ball up to home plate, I was going to stay in baseball. And that had nothing to do with money. It was just the love of the game. You've heard of people who say baseball is all they knew? Well, that's me too. I'm like that. I have loved it all my life. So did my father, and so did my uncles. Everyone back in Cuba loved the game. So I didn't let the things people were saying bother me, and I never thought of quitting." Tiant was released by the Twins before the start of the '71 season. Joe Fitzgerald wrote, quote, "The dreams of a lifetime, indeed the dreams of 2 lifetimes, for the father's aspirations were vicariously entwined with the son's, laid shattered at his feet as Louie waved a last goodbye at the Twins' caravan that was leaving him behind." In '71, Tiant played in the minors for the Atlanta Braves and Boston Red Sox, and then he was called up to the Red Sox in '71. Ed Fitzgerald wrote, quote, "Cuba became a memory, a lingering heartache, a part of his past that followed him everywhere he went, even though he rarely discussed it with anyone other than his tightest circle of friends." By '72, Tiant was a star again, this time with the Red Sox. Sonny Siebert was a former Tribe teammate and then a Red Sox teammate. And Siebert said, quote, "He's exactly the same pitcher he was in 1968. Joe Fitzgerald wrote, quote, "There were plenty of observers still scratching their heads over the resurrection that had taken place before their eyes." Tiant had 40 1/3 consecutive scoreless innings pitched in '72. Late in the 72 season, the Red Sox were in the pennant race, facing the three-time American League champions Orioles at Fenway Park. And the Red Sox fans were cheering Louie Tiant as he was walking to the mound. Joe Fitzgerald said, quote, "It was more than just exuberance over winning a key game. It was a declaration of gratitude from a town so often disappointed to a man so often counted out. Now both were going to get just rewards." It was Commander Oliver Hazard Perry standing on the deck of the Niagara dispatching the terse report to General William Henry Harrison. "We have met the enemy and they are ours." Standing on the mound at Fenway Park that night, Louie Tiant could have made the same claim. He had met the three-time league champions and they were his. Red Sox finished a half game out of first, and Tiant was 15-6 and led the league with an ERA of 1.91. Stan Williams said, quote, "Louie never complains when the guys behind him make errors in the field or fail to get a hit. He'll get mad at himself, but not at the other players. This is so important to a team. If a player thinks the pitcher is going to jump all over him for a mistake, he ends up playing scared. It makes him tense, and that's what causes errors a lot of times. Louie is a real professional, and his teammates all appreciate it." Carl Yastrzemski said, quote, "I've watched Louie walk over to someone who just made an error, even an error that cost him a shutout, and tell the guy not to worry about it. That's why everyone loves to play behind him." In 73, Tiant was 20-13, and he was a Roman Catholic. In October of 73, he made a personal religious commitment. He spent 1 year wearing all white clothing to thank God and St. Barbara for all the blessings in his life. That also included no drinking, no gambling, and no public appearances. Tiant said, quote, "Sometimes things go wrong even when you're doing your best. So I keep trying with all my heart, and if that's not good enough, I'm not going to hang my head and go crazy. I'll just go back out next time and try again." Larry Gafflin wrote, quote, "The Red Sox have had some monumental tempers on the mound in past years. Lefty Grove used to smash things with bats when he lost a tough game. Wes Farrell used to stamp on his own wristwatch. Louie Tiant lights a cigar and goes home." In 74, Tiant was 22-13. During the 74 season, Tiant's wife Maria and their 3 children moved from Mexico City to Boston. His wife was homesick. Tiant wrote, quote, In Mexico, everybody talks to everybody else. But up here, people keep to themselves, and more, and that's harder on a woman. I knew why she was unhappy." Now, Tiant did not see his father for 15 years. Tiant said, quote, 15 years is a long time. He's working in Cuba at a garage serving gas. He's 70 years old, and I can't even send him a dime for a cup of coffee on Christmas. I can't do anything to help him. We've lost so much time already." In May of 75, U.S. Senator George McGovern went to Cuba on a goodwill trip, and he met with dictator Fidel Castro. He asked for permission for Tiant's parents to visit Louie in Boston, in the United States, Boston, Massachusetts, and Fidel Castro gave his permission. Louie Tiant wrote, quote, "I pray I'll see them again, and when I do, it will be the greatest day of my life." Tiant's parents flew to the U.S. and arrived in Boston in August. Joe Fitzgerald wrote, quote, "So much had been pent up for so long, and now it began to pour forth in a relentless stream of conversation as the father and the son renewed their bonds into the wee hours of another day." Louie Tiant's mother said, quote, "Louie is all that we have, and all that's important to me is that happiness and goodness come to him." In 75, the Red Sox won the American League title and went to the World Series. After the World Series, Tiant won 2 games and had a no decision. Cy Bynack, who was Tribe equipment manager at the time, said, quote, "We were all pulling for Louie in Cleveland. Everybody who knew Louie when he was here just loved the guy. He was so super to all of us." Now, 1970, Tiant won a game, or in 75, he won a game against the Tribe in Cleveland, and Louie Tiant said, quote, "I admit now I didn't mind having Alvin Dark see me doing well." Regarding the 70 Twins, Tiant wrote, quote, "If the team was glum after a bad game, I'd start dancing the funky chicken in my long underwear while puffing a cigar." Tiant was 1-7 with Boston in 71 with an ERA of 4.85. Tiant said, quote, "Some guys can work their way out of a slump, and some guys can't. I tell young players it's all about confidence. You have to get your confidence back. I never lost my confidence, no matter how low things got." During the winter, he had a no-hitter. He said, quote, "That was when the rest of my confidence came rushing back." Spring of 72, Tiant was happy to be reunited with a close friend from playing with Cleveland, Tommy Harper. In 72, he had a game. He beat the Twins, his old team. And Tiant said, quote, "The name of the game is to win. You don't have to hate someone." Tiant and Walter Johnson are the only MLB pitchers to have two 40-plus scoreless innings streaks in baseball history. Tiant said, quote, "If you remember that you're playing a game that is meant to be fun and it's not a matter of life and death, you can ride out the slumps, and losing streaks a lot easier." In Cleveland, we had a lot of funny guys on the club, but it was tough to joke around when things were so bad. The manager, Alvin Dark, didn't like to see you laughing when you were in 8th place. Not that I think there was any connection between the two. In 73, the Yankees' Ron Blomberg was the first designated hitter, and Tiant was the pitcher in that at-bat. Regarding the 75 World Series Game 1, Tiant threw a complete game shutout. Bernie Carbo, his teammate, said, quote, "One of the things that I admired about Louie was all the love that you could see between him and his father after the years and years they had been apart." Phil Pepe wrote, quote, "On one pitch, Louie Tiant checked the position of his center fielder, counted the house, looked up to see if it was raining, and then ordered 3 hot dogs from a vendor behind third base before striking out Tony Perez with a sidearm curveball." Tiant said, quote, "After all those years thinking I might never see my mom and dad again, I was lucky enough that God made it happen. But as quick as happiness comes along, there are always new challenges to face, on the field and off." Tiant's parents never returned to Cuba. They lived with him in Boston. And his father died December 10th, 1976 in Boston, only a year and 4 months after coming to the U.S. And his mother died 3 days later. So there was a double funeral. Tiant said, quote, "The whole thing, them going like that one after the other, it almost killed me. But you know what? I had 15 months with them at the end, and they were the happiest months of my life. God answered my prayers and brought us back together." In 78, Tiant was teammates with Dennis Eckersley. Tiant said this, quote, "Dennis Eckersley was a tall, lean right-hander from California with a great fastball, tons of hair, and loads of self-confidence. Fans loved X energy on the mound, where he had a high leg kick and liked to pump his fist after strikeouts." Last game of the 78 season, Tiant was pitching. If they won that game, they would tie the Yankees for first place, and then they'd have a playoff. And he wore a Santa Barbara medallion during that game. Tiant said, quote, "Saint Barbara of Cuba is the patron saint of artillerymen, and I was taking her with me to battle one more time." Tiant threw a two-hit shutout and won that game 5-0. Red Sox third baseman Jack Brohammer, played for Cleveland, caught the last out. And Brohammer said, quote, "and was already jumping for joy by the time he caught it." In 79, Tiant was playing for the Yankees. He had a two-hit shutout against the A's. Tiant said, quote, "I appreciated it when the Red Sox finally did win that World Series in 2004. The team made us former ball players feel like we were a part of it." Tiant was given a World Series ring in 2004 and invited to be in the parade. Tiant said, quote, "When I got out of Cuba, I swore before God I didn't want to come back as long as Fidel Castro was there. But then time goes by, and you start wondering, when am I going to come back? I realized I had to go to Cuba before I died, even if Fidel Castro was still in power." 2007, he returned after 46 years. When the plane landed in Cuba, the flight attendant said on the intercom, quote, "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Havana." Tiant said, quote, "I had waited so long to hear those words." Now, he met a lot of relatives, and he said, quote, "They told me how much my parents had missed me and how proud they were of my career." His cousin said, quote, "Even if you didn't know it, here in this country, everybody in the neighborhood would hear about you, about all the things Luisito would do. You've been away for a long time. Always, we adore you, we miss you, and followed what you've done." The Lost Season of Havana was a movie documentary made about that trip. And he came back in 2016 and met Raul Castro and shook his hands. Tiant said, quote, "Raul stuck out his hand. Although I felt uncomfortable, I shook it. If it offended anybody, I am sorry." 2016, Fidel Castro died, and Louie Tiant said, quote, "Fidel Castro could die 1,000,000 times, and he would never be able to pay for what he did or what he was, not just for me, but for all the Cubans over there and here in the United States. Home is a feeling you've lived a good life and done your best for yourself and those you love. It's been a good ride, and I'm still in there pitching." Louie Tiant. Steve Hargan was 5-14 with an ERA of 5.70, 32 games, 23 starts, a complete game, a shutout, 143 2/3 innings pitched, and 76 strikeouts. Hargan batted .159 with 7 hits. He scored 3 runs. He was caught stealing, had a walk, and struck out 12 times. Hargan was with Cleveland from 1965 to 1972. Steve Hargan. Dick Ellsworth was 6-9 with an ERA of 4.13, 34 games, 22 starts, 3 complete games, a shutout, 135 innings pitched, and 48 strikeouts. Ellsworth batted .133 with 6 hits. He had 3 RBIs, walked twice, and struck out 19 times. Ellsworth was born in 1940 in Lusk, Wyoming, and he's 79 years old in 2019. For his career, he was 115 and 137 with an ERA of 3.72 and 1,140 strikeouts. Ellsworth pitched for the Chicago Cubs, Philadelphia Phillies, Boston Red Sox, Cleveland Indians, and Milwaukee Brewers from 1958 to 1971. He was an All-Star in 64 with the Cubs. In 63, he won 22 games. He set a record for the largest ERA improvement in consecutive seasons for pitchers who threw at least 150 innings pitched. In 1962, he had an ERA of 5.09, and in 63, it was 2.11 lower. It was 2.11 or 2.98 runs per game lower. Ellsworth is in the Fresno County Athletic Hall of Fame. In the minors, he played for the Fort Worth Cats and the Houston Buffs. Dick Ellsworth. Stan Williams was the closer. Williams was 6-14 with an ERA of 3.94, 61 games, 15 starts, 3 complete games, 12 saves, 178 1/3 innings pitched, and 139 strikeouts. Williams batted .100 with 4 hits and 40 at-bats. He scored a run, walked twice, had 2 RBIs, walked 5 times, and struck out 25 times. Williams was with Cleveland 1965 and from 1967 to 1969. This was the end of his time in Cleveland. His MLB playing career lasted until 1972, and he continued as an MLB coach until 1999. Stan Williams. Mike Paul was 5-10 with an ERA of 3.61, 47 games, 12 starts, 2 saves, 117 and a third innings pitched, and 98 strikeouts. Paul batted 27 times. He did not have a hit. He scored a run, had a walk, and struck out 9 times. Paul was with Cleveland from 1968 to 1970. Mike Paul. Juan Pizarro was a relief pitcher. Pizarro was 3-3 with an ERA of 3.16. 48 games, 4 starts, a complete game, 4 saves, 82 and 2/3 innings pitched, and 44 strikeouts. Pizarro batted 200 with 3 hits and 15 at-bats. He scored 2 runs, had 2 RBIs, a walk, and struck out 4 times. Pizarro was born in 1937 in Santurce, Puerto Rico, and he's 82 years old in 2019. For his career, he was 131 and 105 with an ERA of 3.43 and 1,522 strikeouts. Pizarro pitched for the Milwaukee Braves, Chicago White Sox, Pittsburgh Pirates, Boston Red Sox, Cleveland Indians, Oakland Athletics, Chicago Cubs, and Houston Astros from 1957 to 1974. He was a 2-time All-Star in 63 and 64 with the White Sox. He won a World Series title in 57 with the Milwaukee Braves. In 57 and 58, he was in Puerto Rico. In the winter baseball, he was MVP. His greatest success was with the White Sox, and his best season was 64 when he was 19-9 with 4 shutouts. In 71, he was the Cubs. In 71, he shut out the Cubs. With the Cubs, he shut out the Mets and Tom Seaver 1-0 at Shea Stadium and hit a home run for the only run in the 8th inning. Well, it would be more than 40 years before a starting pitcher broke a 0-0 tie in the 8th inning or later with a home run, and that was accomplished by Clayton Kershaw for the Dodgers in 2013. Pizarro won more than 400 games, 131 in MLB, 66 in the minors, 38 in Mexico, and 157 in Puerto Rico. He's second behind Ruben Gomez for Puerto Rican career wins. He's in the Caribbean Hall of Fame and Puerto Rico Sports Hall of Fame. In the minors, Pizarro played for the Hawaii Islanders, Iowa Oaks, Louisville Colonels, and Wichita Arrows. In Puerto Rico, he played for Cangrejeros de Santurce, Criollos de Caguas. He has the same name of Francisco Pizarro, the Spanish conqueror of South America. Pizarro had a fear of flying. He liked to take the bus, and he was once fined by manager Alvin Dark for refusing to fly from Detroit to Cleveland. Juan Pizarro. Ron Law was a relief pitcher. Law was 3-4 with an ERA of 4.99, 35 games, 1 start, a save, 52 and a third innings pitched, and 29 strikeouts. Law batted 143 with 1 hit and 7 at-bats. He struck out once. Law was born in 1946 in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, and he's aged 73 in 2019. And his MLB career was just with Cleveland in 1969. Ron Law. Horacio Pena was a relief pitcher. Pena was 4-2 with an ERA of 5.21, 31 games, 4 starts, a save, 46 and 2/3 innings pitched, and 32 strikeouts. Pena batted .500 with 3 hits and 6 at-bats. He had an RBI and struck out twice. Pena was with Cleveland from 1968 to 1969. This was the end of his time in Cleveland. His MLB career continued until 1978. Horace Pineapple, or real name Horacio Pena. Larry Burchart was a relief pitcher. Burchart was 0-2 with an ERA of 4.25, 29 games, 42 and a third innings pitched, and 26 strikeouts. He did not bat. Burchart was born in 1946 in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and he's 73 years old in 2019. He played for the Cleveland Indians in 1969. This was the extent of his MLB career. He was an All-American for Oklahoma State University Cowboys and won 2 College World Series, and he's in the Oklahoma State Athletic Hall of Fame. In 67, with Ogden for the Dodgers system in the Pioneer League, they won a league title, and he was the winning pitcher in the championship game. In 69, he had a severe injury, a collision with George Scott, for the Red Sox, who was playing first base. In the minors, Burchard played for the Wichita Arrows. Larry Burchard. Jack Hamilton was 0-2 with an ERA of 4.40, 20 games, 1 save, 30 and 2/3 innings pitched, and 13 strikeouts. Hamilton batted twice and struck out once. He did not have a hit. He was born in 1938 in Burlington, Iowa, and died in 2018 in Branson, Missouri at age 79. For his career, he was 32-40 with an ERA of 4.53 and 20 saves. Hamilton pitched for the Philadelphia Phillies, Detroit Tigers, New York Mets, and California Angels, Cleveland Indians, and Chicago White Sox from 1962 to 1969. He was mostly a relief pitcher. In 1967, Hamilton was the pitcher who hit Tony Conigliara with the pitch for the Red Sox, resulting in a broken cheekbone and a broken eye socket. Very tragic. After he retired, Jack Hamilton owned several restaurants in Iowa and southern Missouri. The minors, he played for the Decatur Commodores, Memphis Chickasaws, Tucson Toros, and York White Roses. Jack Hamilton. Jerry Kroll was a relief pitcher. Kroll had no decisions and an ERA of 4.13, 19 games, 24 innings pitched, and 28 strikeouts. He did not bat. Kroll was born in 1941 in Culver City, California, and he's 78 years old in 2019. For his career, he was 6-7 with an ERA of 4.24 on 159 and a third innings pitched. Kroll pitched for the Philadelphia Phillies, New York Mets, Houston Astros, and Cleveland Indians from 1964 to 1969. He went to Brigham Young University and L.A. Pierce College. In 1964, he led the league in balks with 4. In the minors, he played for the Amarillo Sonics, Arkansas Travelers, Bakersfield Bears, Buffalo Bisons, Chattanooga Lookouts, and Des Moines Demons, Hawaii Islanders, and Oklahoma City 89ers. And in Venezuela for Tiburones de la Guaira and Tigres de Aragua. Gary Kroll. Phil Hennigan was 2-1 with an ERA of 3.31, 9 games, 16 and a third innings pitched, and 10 strikeouts. Hennigan batted twice, did not have a hit, and struck out once. Hennigan was born in 1946 in Jasper, Texas, and died in 2016 in Center, Texas at age 70. For his career, he was 17-24. with an ERA of 4.26 and 188 strikeouts. Hennigan pitched for the Cleveland Indians and New York Mets from 1969 to 1973. He was in the U.S. Army as an artilleryman in the Vietnam War and won a Medal for Bravery. In 1971, he was 8th in the league in saves with 14. 72 was his best year. He was 5-3 with an ERA of 2.67, 67 and a third innings pitched, and 5 saves. Hennigan died of lung cancer. In the minors, he played for the Reno Silver Sox, Tidewater Tides, Wichita Arrows, and in Venezuela for Tigres de Aragua. Sonny Siebert was 0-1 with an ERA of 3.21. 2 games, both starts, 14 innings pitched, and 6 strikeouts. Siebert batted .250 with 1 hit and 4 at-bats. On April 19th, he was traded with Joe Askew and Vicente Romo to Boston for Ken Harrelson, Dick Ellsworth, and Juan Pizarro. Siebert was with Cleveland from 1964 to 1969. This was the end of his time in Cleveland. His MLB career continued until 1975. Sonny Siebert. Gary Boyd was 0-2 with an ERA of 9.00. 8 games, 3 starts, 11 innings pitched, and 9 strikeouts. He batted once and struck out. Boyd was born in 1946 in Pasadena, California, and he's 73 years old in 2019. His MLB career was just with Cleveland in '69. He went to Junipero Serra High School in Gardenia, California, and played on the baseball team. Gary Boyd. And finally, Vicente Romo was 1-1 with an ERA of 2.25, 3 games, 8 innings pitched, and 7 strikeouts. Romo batted .500 with 1 hit and 2 at-bats. Romo was with Cleveland from 1968 to 1969. This was the end of his time in Cleveland. His MLB career continued until 1982. Vicente Romo. Now, after the regular season, the league championship series were played. In the ALCS, the Baltimore Orioles, the American League East champions, defeated the Minnesota Twins, American League West champions, 3-0, a sweep. And in the NLCS, the New York Mets, the National League East champions, defeated the Atlanta Braves, the National League West champions, 3-0, another sweep. These were the first ALCS and NLCS. In the NLCS, Henry Aaron hit .357 with a home run in each game, 3 home runs and two doubles. After the '69 season, Howard Bryant wrote, quote, "From that day forward, he was no longer Henry Aaron. He was the man chasing Babe Ruth." Game 3 of the NLCS, Nolan Ryan had 7 innings of effective relief to help put the Mets in the World Series. After the Mets clinched the NLCS in the clubhouse, the Mets' Tom Seaver poured a bottle of champagne over the head of New York City Mayor John Lindsay. So in the 1969 World Series, the National League champions, New York Mets, defeated the American League champions, Baltimore Orioles, 4-1. The MVP was Don Clendenin of the Mets. Hall of Famers in the World Series for the Mets, Yogi Berra, a coach, along with Tom Seaver, Nolan Ryan. For the Orioles, Earl Weaver, the manager, and Jim Palmer, and Brooks Robinson, and Frank Robinson. The Mets' '69 World Series triumph was one of the greatest upsets in World Series history. They called them the Miracle Mets or the Amazing Mets. '69 was the first year the Mets had a winning record in the history of their team going back to 1962. Tom Seaver said, quote, "When I came to the Mets, there was an aura of defeatism on the team, and I refused to accept it. That lovable loser stuff was not funny to me." The Mets' Ron Swoboda said about the '69 Mets, quote, "We got to a point where we felt like we could go out there every day and win. The easiest baseball I ever played in my career was 1969. We just felt like we were sitting up on the waves, surfing, just riding it. It was exciting. Never felt that before, never felt that since." Ed Kranepool said, quote, "People will never forget the '69 Mets. Being part of that team was special in a lot of ways. We caught New York by surprise. We caught the world by surprise. On August 15th, the Mets were 9.5 games out of first. Of course, they ended up winning the division. Now, banner day at Shea Stadium in '69, the winning banner had this, quote, "One small step for Gil Hodges, one giant leap for Metkind." Before the World Series, Orioles' Brooks Robinson, regarding the Miracle Mets, he said, quote, "I don't believe in that team of destiny business. We're here to prove there is no Santa Claus." Game 1 was in Baltimore. The Orioles won 4-0, so then the Mets won the next 4. Mike Cuellar was the winning pitcher, and Don Buford hit a home run. Game 2, the Mets won 2-0. Jerry Koosman, the winning pitcher, and Don Clendenin a home run. Ron Taylor the save. Games 3, 4, and 5 were at Shea Stadium in New York City. Game 3, the Mets won 5-0, and Gary Gentry was the winning pitcher. Home runs were hit by Tommy Agee and Ed Kranepool, and Nolan Ryan got the save. On the 4th inning, there were 2 on and 2 out, and Tommy Agee made a big catch in left center field on a ball hit by Elrod Hendricks. In the 7th, the Orioles had the bases loaded with 2 outs, and Paul Blair hit a drive to right center, and Tommy Agee made a diving catch, so he saved 5 runs. Big hero in that game, Tommy Agee. Game 4, the Mets won 2-0 in 10 innings, and Tom Seaver went all the way for the victory. Don Clendenin hit his second home run, and Ron Swoboda had a big diving catch in the 9th. So that put the Mets up 3-1 in the series. Orioles' Brooks Robinson said, quote, "We can't afford to lose until next spring." Game 5, the Mets won 5-3. Jerry Koosman was the winning pitcher. And there were home runs hit by Dave McNally, who was the starting pitcher for Baltimore, and Frank Robinson. For the Mets, Don Clendenin and Al Weiss. In the sixth inning, Cleon Jones was batting, and there was a ball. There was an argument that he'd been hit by the pitch, and they said there was there was shoe polish on the ball, and later turns out the Mets put shoe polish on the ball. Had gone into the dugout, and somebody put some shoe polish on it, and they showed it to the umpire, who awarded Jones first base. And there's a reference to that scene in the 2000 movie Frequency, starring Dennis Quaid. The game was 3-3 after 7. Then Ron Swoboda drove in Cleon Jones in the 8th to give the Mets a 4-3 lead, and then they scored another run. The last out, Davey Johnson hit a fly ball to left field that Cleon Jones caught. Stanley Cohen wrote, quote, "For the first time in as many weeks, Shea Stadium was the scene of a rowdy, jubilant rampage. The Met clubhouse was appropriately raucous." Cleon Jones said, quote, "Some people still might not believe in us, but then some people still think the world is flat." Stanley Cohen wrote, quote, "The streets and avenues of New York City were clogged with people dancing and singing and chanting, 'We're number one.'" Jerry Koosman said, quote, "All the World Series games were pivotal. Each game changes the mood of the club. It's how well you pick yourself up. If you do have a loss, that's important. A loss doesn't carry as much weight if you really believe in yourself and have confidence, and we believed." Art Shamsky, who played for the Mets, said, "Game 3 was Tommy Agee's day to shine, and was so well deserved after all the trials and tribulations he endured when he first joined the team. Game 4, Ron Swoboda had that big catch. Swoboda said, quote, "Some players had a career. I had a catch." Game 4, J.C. Martin, who was a Mets catcher, had a game-winning bunt and then an error. And he said, quote, "That had to be the highlight of my career." Yeah, after the bunt, the ball was thrown, it hit his wrist and carried him off, and the game-winning run scored. Again, Game 5, the last out, Davey Johnson hit the fly ball to left, caught by Cleon Jones. Art Shamsky said, quote, "And then in what has become as iconic a symbol of triumph as ever seen in sports history, Cleon Jones caught the ball and went down on one knee. A beautiful explanation point on a glorious season." Bobby Files said, quote, "My 69 Mets World Series title ring always reminds me in difficult times, personally and in business, that, boy, if you just try to be consistent and honest and keep plugging away, things will go your way." In 2017, Art Shamsky organized a reunion of some of the 69 Mets players which took place in 2017 at Tom Seaver's home in the Napa Valley in California. And Jerry Koosman, Buddy Harrelson, Ron Swoboda, and Shamsky all came. Ron Swoboda said, quote, "As I've gotten older, I've realized what a privilege it was to have had an occupation that people took such joy from when you succeeded." Art Shamsky said, quote, regarding the 69 Mets, quote, "No matter what our backgrounds, where we came from, or what we believed, none of that mattered. We were the closest of teammates during the best of times. We were then and remain today forever brothers." Now, the MVPs in 1969 in the American League, Harmon Killebrew for the Twins, and the National League, Willie McCovey for the San Francisco Giants. The Cy Young Award winners in the American League, Mike Cuellar for the Orioles, and the National League, Tom Seaver for the Mets. So that's the story of the 1969 Cleveland Indians. They had a tough year. God bless the guys who played for the Indians in 1969. And everyone else associated with the team, including the fans, especially the Second World War veterans, Korean War veterans, and Vietnam War veterans. Captains of the Cuyahoga, lovers of Lake Erie, Terminal Tower Power, fans of the Free Stamp statue and the Fountain of Eternal Life, Euclid Avenue electricity, Severance Hall stalwarts, Cleveland Museum of Art enthusiasts, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and Museum rebels, Christmas Story House happy people, Museum of Contemporary Art maniacs, Cleveland Botanical Garden goers, Old Arcade admirers, Playhouse Square seers, Settlers Landing Park purists, Western Reserve Historical Society wonders, First Energy Stadium friends, Progressive Field pals, Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse renegades, Cuyahoga Valley National Park pioneers, Great Lakes Science Center supporters, Holden Arboretum enjoyers, and Cleveland Public Library learners. Tribe, Browns, Cavs, Monsters, Gladiators, and Fusion rule. And Spiders, Bulldogs, Rosenblums, Barons, Rams, Crusaders, Force, Crunch, Lumberjacks, and Rockers rule. Cleveland, City of Champions. Cleveland is the best location in the nation on the north coast of America. New York is the Big Apple. Cleveland is a plum. It's been 71 years since 1948. This is our year. Go Tribe. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. God bless you. Take care. And I'll see you next time.